Welcome to our sessions on togetherness, couples living life better together. We're going to be spending these next few sessions talking about marriage. And I've had the opportunity, the privilege really, to be married to my beautiful wife, Autumn, for 40 years. And we've had our ups and we've had our downs for sure. We've been a pastor for almost that amount of time. And so we've counseled a lot of couples. And we've just learned a lot through our experience. And so we'll be talking about that experience as well as the biblical foundation, biblical principles for marriage. Most of the source material today will be from a book that I wrote called Togetherness, Couples Living Life Better Together. And if you want to, you can pick this up at Amazon, as well as there's a group curriculum available if you wanted to gather some friends and go through the material to help each other with your marriages. But wherever you're at in your marriage journey, I just want you to know that the things that we're going to talk about are going to help you. And that's my goal, is really just to help you. Wherever your marriage is on the spectrum, whether you're doing well, you have a strong marriage, I hope this is going to help you have a stronger marriage. If you're at the other end and you're really struggling right now, there's some things going on, real challenges that you're facing, you're wondering if you're even going to make it. I know that if you'll prayerfully apply these principles to your life personally and into your marriage, it's going to help you and it's going to save you. The Apostle Paul has great advice that he writes in Philippians chapter 3, verse 13. Paul says to forget what lies behind and strain toward what lies ahead. And I want you to know, no matter where you're at in your marriage, what baggage is brought into it, what pain you've experienced, disappointments, failures along the way, hurts that you've caused one another. Through God's grace and through His mercy, through His kindness, you will be able to leave those things behind. And from this day, if you'll take the principles that we're going to talk about, apply them to yourself, apply them to your marriage, you can strain, you can press towards what God has for you in your future. I want you to know that your marriage is more important to God than even you. He has a plan and a purpose to use you as a couple, to do great things for Him, to influence people and extend His kingdom. And so let's just make that commitment as we take this journey together, this togetherness journey. Let's do our best to leave behind the past, and let's build afresh, starting right now, today, this moment, and press on to what God has for you. Amen? There's a heart disease that I think every one of us would love to suffer from. Years ago, there was a study done on close to 400,000 elderly couples, and what they found was couples that had been married like 50 years or longer, when one of the spouses would die, it was very common that within a matter of hours, days, or weeks, the other spouse, literally their heart would stop and they would pass away as well. I'll never forget one story that I read was literally within 1 hour, a husband had died, the wife had him in her arms, and within 1 hour, her heart stopped as well and she passed away. And I won't try to pronounce the medical term because it's complicated, but it's known in the medical community as broken heart syndrome. It's a real thing. The pain of loss literally can cause a physical reaction and cause a heart to stop. So the point being is that our relationship connection can be so strong that literally we can die of a broken heart at the loss of a loved one. So let's talk about coming together. You know, togetherness was God's idea. He created man in order to have fellowship, to be in community, and the greatest form, the greatest level of togetherness is the marriage relationship. In Genesis chapter 1:27, it says, God created mankind in His own image. In the image of God, He created them, male and female, He created them. In Genesis 1:31, God saw all that He had made, and it was very good. In Genesis 2, chapter 18, the Lord said, it is not good for man to be alone. And in Genesis 2, verse 24, that is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. Again, in our togetherness experience, we love to have friends, we love to have community, we love extended family, we love our church community, but there's something about that one person that God has brought into our life, that we take unto ourselves as our spouse. That's the most intimate form of togetherness that we have. It's the greatest expression of togetherness that exists. Now, culture is doing all it can to devalue biblical marriage, to devalue the Christian togetherness experience. And here are 3 ways that it's happening. Number 1, marriage is optional. Marriage is optional. In his book, Get Married, author Brad Wilcox writes about how present-day culture devalues marriage. And this is what he said, especially regarding young people. He said, quote, "Many have bought into the belief that anything good about marriage comes with various unpleasant side effects. Boredom, foregone job opportunities, the burdens of parenthood, oppressive gender roles, being tied down. They imagine steering clear of marriage maximizes their freedom, their wealth, and their fulfillment." The funny thing is that according to research, it's actually just the opposite. The most happy, fulfilled, satisfied people are those who are happily married. So many people feel that just not getting married is easier. It's easier financially, or they fear long-term commitment. They're going to get stuck in a relationship that they feel they can't get out of. Maybe their parents had a bad marriage and it wasn't modeled well for them. So all they see is the pain of watching their parents struggle through marriage life. Or I could have sex without the commitment, so why commit? Research has shown that the U.S. marriage rate has fallen about 65% in the last 60 years. And as a result, the U.S. birth rate has fallen, which is definitely not good for our country. It's not good for our financial future. And more importantly, it goes against God's plan for marriage and family. Some results of this new view of marriage is an increase of loneliness, an increase in cohabitation, and an increase in broken hearts along the way, as many people suffer from loneliness and the pain of breakups as they go from partner to partner to partner to partner. So marriage is optional. Number 2, marriage is disposable. In my home state of California in 1969, they enacted a no-fault divorce law. Now, before 1969, it was very hard to get a divorce. The court would make a couple prove there was abuse or desertion or adultery. But after this no-fault divorce law came in, or what is now known as irreconcilable differences, the divorce rate shot up and doubled within 20 years. I think it was by 1989, 20 years after this no-fault divorce became available, up to 50% of all marriages suffered from divorce. So let me mention divorce just for a moment. I call this the hard heart principle. As I've been a pastor for many years and have dealt with a lot of marriages, and I've seen a lot of Christian couples divorce, and divorce happens. I get it. It's always painful, but thank God for His grace. Thank God for His forgiveness. But I want to talk to you just about what I believe is the main cause of divorce so that we can avoid it if at all possible. In Matthew chapter 19, the Pharisees came up to Jesus and they asked him this question, and starting in verse 3. The Pharisees came up to Jesus and they tested him and they asked him, "Is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause?" And he answered, "Have you not read that He who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate." But they said to him, "Why then did Moses command one to give a certificate of divorce to his wife and send her away?" And Jesus responded to them, "Because of your hardness of heart, Moses allows you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery." So this is very interesting. Hardness of heart, the term that Jesus used, in the Greek, that word hardness is sclero. It's sclerocardia. Scleros means hard. It's where we get the English word sclerosis. The Greek word for cardia is cardian. It means cardiac. It's where we get the word heart. So together, it's the hardening of the heart. So as I mentioned, scleros is where we get the medical term sclerosis, which is an abnormal hardening of body tissue, causing organs to begin to shut down. And so what Jesus is saying is that because of the hardness of their heart, husband towards a wife or a wife towards a husband, because of the hardness of their heart, their marriage began to die. and would die to the point of divorce. So the key to avoiding divorce is to keeping a heart soft one towards another. It doesn't mean you don't experience pain and difficulty, but if you allow your heart to get hard, it's like the organ of your body getting hard. It's not functioning. And as soon as an organ stops functioning, your body begins to die. It's the same thing with your marriage. If you allow your hearts to get hard one towards the other, your relationship begins to die. The life is sucked right out of it. So how can I maintain a soft heart? Well, let me just give you a couple thoughts. First of all is love Jesus more. Love Jesus more than your spouse. If you love Jesus more than your spouse, here's the key. You're going to look to Jesus to meet all the needs that you have instead of relying on your spouse to meet all your needs. Can I tell you that your spouse is an imperfect person? Now, I know you're perfect, but your spouse is imperfect, just so you know. But I want you to realize that they can't fix all of your problems. They can't complete you. I'll talk about that in just a little bit. Only Jesus can do that. And so when you look to Jesus, when you love Jesus even more than your spouse, that's going to help you to maintain a soft heart towards your spouse because you'll have a lot more grace. You'll look to the Lord to meet all of your needs and to help to heal the pain in your life. As I counsel dating couples, I always say this, listen, pick a young woman who loves Jesus more than you. It's okay to take second place to Jesus every time. So maintain a soft heart by loving Jesus more than your spouse. The second thing you can do is pray for your spouse every day. What I have discovered is that it's really hard to stay angry and bitter towards someone that you're praying for every day. There's something about praying for each other every day that softens your heart. And that supernatural love of God that can fill your heart and overflow into your spouse, that supernatural love of God. It's beyond the natural love that you have. It's beyond the natural attraction. It's beyond your human ability to love. That supernatural love of God that only is available to us as we're praying for our spouse. And then I would encourage you to live out Galatians chapter 5, verse 22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love and joy and peace and patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. You know, the Bible says that this is the fruit of the Spirit. That's what Paul writes. It's not a gift of the Spirit. It's the fruit of the Spirit. And so as you press into God, as you worship, as you pray, as you attend church, as you love Jesus more than your spouse, what's going to happen is the fruit of the Spirit is just going to come out of you. It's not some supernatural dispensation or supernatural gift that God gives you. It's simply a natural response to the love of God as you're falling in love with Him, and it leaks over to your spouse. Could you imagine having a marriage full of love instead of hate, joy instead of unhappiness, peace instead of angst and anxiety and anger, kindness instead of being mean one to another, self-control over your emotions? If you have a marriage that is full of the fruit of the Spirit, I guarantee you, you're going to be happy. You're going to make it through every challenge that you have, every rough patch that you hit. You're going to be able to overcome that and get through it. And like Paul said, you're going to be able to press on towards the high call of God on your life and in your marriage if it's full of the fruit of the Spirit. So for your marriage to survive, having a soft heart toward one another is key. And number 3, marriage is traditional. And what they mean by that is it's old-fashioned. In other words, it's a negative. There are now trending untraditional marriage arrangements. Let me list just a couple of them. Monogamish. It means a spouse that allows sexual infidelity provided the active spouse is honest about it. Could you imagine? But this is a real thing. Polyamory. It's a spouse who is in love with more than one person simultaneously. These are very common arrangements now in today's culture. Another one is a throuple. In other words, it's a 3-way relationship. It's sharing all aspects of life like a married couple would. Totally against God's design for marriage. God has a design for marriage, one man and one woman for life. The person that you're married to right now is God's will for your life. That one man, that one woman who came together in marriage, becoming one, That's God's will for you right now. And my prayer for you is that you'll be able, as we've mentioned, to make this marriage work by doing what is necessary to become the man or the woman of God that He's called you to be, so you could be that man or woman for God for your spouse. So let's now take a look at God's view for marriage, right? God's view for marriage. First of all, marriage is a covenant and not a contract. Marriage is a covenant and not a contract. A contract-based marriage is simply a performance-based agreement, dependent on the performance of the spouse. So in other words, I will marry you as long as you perform these various aspects of my expectations, and if you don't, then I'm out. That's what a contract does. A contract is based on performance. Covenant is based on love. It's based on a sacred bond between a husband and a wife and between their God. It's inviting God into your relationship. You're not just living for each other, but you're living for God, and He is at the center of your marriage. The wedding ceremony has strong spiritual meaning because it's based on divine law in Scripture and not just civil law of the state. You know, going down to the courthouse and getting married, it's done. The state recognizes it. We get that. But there's something about that Christian ceremony where a man and a woman come and in front of their friends and their pastor and their family, they covenant not only to love and be committed to each other, but to invite God to be the center of their relationship. Covenant marriage is based on covenant love and commitment, not a contract or a performance. Secondly, marriage is between one man and one woman for life. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24 makes that very clear. We read that earlier. Let's read it again. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. So men and women were purposely created different by God to complement one another. So a man leaves his parents, a woman leaves her parents, and they come together to become one flesh. Equal in value, different in nature. Designed to work together to create families, to serve and to influence their communities and their church, to serve together, to extend God's kingdom, and to ultimately glorify Him. And for those who hold the Bible as the authoritative Word of God, there is no other option other than this design of one man, one woman for life. Thirdly, marriage is a man and woman becoming united in body, soul, and spirit. United in body, which is sexual expression. We'll talk about that in a future session. United in soul, which is mind, will, and emotions. You begin to think alike. You begin to feel the same about similar circumstances. You have this emotional connection that is so strong. So there's something about being united in soul. It's truly two people becoming like one person. And then united in spirit, which is spiritual togetherness. Something about, as I mentioned, praying together, serving God together, worshiping together, reading the Bible together. There is a spiritual connection that it is so hard to break, and yet it's so beautiful. It's actually the most intimate thing is when a man and a woman, a husband and wife come together spiritually, they become one. So fourthly, marriage is companionship. I like to say it this way. Marriage is the end result of a friendship gone good. You know, you look across the room and you see that person. I'll admit that when I saw my wife, I actually saw her in a picture, and it was definitely lust at first sight. I just thought she was beautiful. I didn't know her, but I wanted to get to know her. And through a mutual friend, we met and we became friends. And it's just the same with you. You become friends and you just realize you like each other. And then the more time you spend together, you really like each other. And then you find that you really like each other. And then before you know it, you're in love and you're wanting to spend the rest of your life together. It's companionship. God's intention would be that there is no greater companion in your life than the person that you're married to. And oftentimes when the marriage is struggling, my wife and I have found this to be true, when our marriage is struggling, it's our friendship that keeps it together. We might be struggling in some marriage stuff, but we're still friends. And so we're going to focus on those things and we're going to fix those things. We're not going to split up because we're best of friends. And lastly, marriage is intimacy at the deepest level. Intimacy is peeling back the layers and allowing someone to see the real you. And that could be challenging at times, to take down the veneer, to lower the guard that you have or the walls to your heart, and to let someone see the real you. It's emotional intimacy where you're sharing feelings, your dreams, your fears, you're transparent, you're being vulnerable, you're having these discussions, these conversations, you're sharing, the deepest part of you. That's emotional intimacy. And then spiritual intimacy, again, prayer, discussion about the Bible, it's worship, it's service together in your church. And then, of course, sexual intimacy, which is the most powerful physical expression of your love. So marriage is intimacy at the deepest level. So let me just end this first session with this. Coming together isn't easy. It's beautiful and it's messy at the same time. Two individuals coming together that don't quite fit perfectly. I think of a jigsaw puzzle. My family's really into puzzles, and you get down to the last piece and it's missing. It's like, the end of the world has happened. And that's what happens. And then you find it and you put it in and it fits perfect and that picture's complete. And that's what marriage is like. It's like having to work and mold and shape and then finally coming together as the missing pieces fit to become one. In marriage, the missing pieces and gaps are filled with love and grace and forgiveness. And it's in our imperfection that the beauty of togetherness is seen. The grace and the forgiveness of accepting one another with all of our weaknesses, all of our idiosyncrasies, all the crazy stuff that we do. Everywhere that we fall short, and yet we extend grace and forgiveness, and we lift each other up, and we accept one another for the way we are, and we move forward into all that God has for us. There's a famous line out of a famous movie starring Tom Cruise and Renee Zellweger, and they're this couple falling in love, and at the end of the movie, he looks at her and he says very emotionally and heartfelt, he says, "You complete me." Well, it's a touching line, made for a great moment in the movie. You may have even teared up, but it's just not true. Only God can complete us. Only God can complete you. And we will look to Him as husbands and wives, as we look to Him as a married couple to complete all of the holes in our marriage, all of our character traits that are lacking, all of the hurts that we've experienced over the past, the holes in our heart and in our life. Only God can complete that. And it's by His grace that we can look at each other and that we can come together and be happy together and to survive and thrive together as a married couple, knowing that it's God that completes us. It's not each other. We're going to let each other down. There are certain things in our life that we are going to be unable to change and be perfect, right? But we know that through the grace of God, we can come together, we can thrive, and we can stay together.